I'm Jessica Campbell, 32, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. Since I landed my first real job, my paycheck became everyone's safety net. This Christmas was supposed to be different. When they said they were too broke for a gathering, I believed them. I ate microwaved leftovers alone while scrolling through Instagram. That's when I saw it, my sister's live broadcast. A full Christmas party at my parents' house, with everyone except me. Before I continue, where are you watching from today? If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved, hit subscribe. Story might help you recognize when it's time to walk away. Growing up in suburban Milwaukee, I learned early that financial stability wasn't a given in our household. My father, Richard Campbell, worked as a real estate agent with unpredictable income and a gambling habit he barely concealed. My mother, Eleanor, worked part-time as a school secretary but spent most of her energy making excuses for Dad's behavior. My younger sister Amber, 3 years my junior, inherited Dad's appetite for risk without his occasional charm. I was different from the start. While they chased instant gratification, I saved my allowance and worked summer jobs. I babysat, delivered newspapers, and spent weekends at the local bookstore making minimum wage. By 18, I had enough saved for my first semester at Northwestern University, where I studied marketing on partial scholarship. Juggling classes and 2 jobs, I somehow graduated with honors. Chicago became my home after college. I started at a mid-sized marketing firm, working 60-hour weeks, but steadily climbing the ladder. By 26, I was managing major accounts. By 30, I had moved to a prestigious agency with a 6-figure salary, comprehensive benefits, and actual work-life balance. I bought a modest but elegant condo in Lincoln Park, maintained a healthy 401k, and even had an emergency fund that would cover 6 months of expenses. My family's finances followed a different trajectory. Dad's gambling worsened after a few big wins convinced him he had a system. Mom refinanced their house twice to cover debts. Amber dropped out of community college, cycled through retail jobs, and regularly overdrafted her checking account buying designer clothes she couldn't afford. The calls for help began during my senior year of college. Dad needed $800 for an investment opportunity. Mom's car required repairs she couldn't cover. Amber faced eviction from her apartment. Each emergency came with promises of repayment that never materialized. By 23, I was their unofficial banker, transferring money monthly to cover their mortgage, utilities, or car payments. Just until things turn around, Dad would say, his voice confident as ever. I've got a big listing about to close. Mom was more direct. We raised you, Jessica. Family helps family. Amber simply expected it. You don't even spend your money on anything fun. Why not help your sister out? Holiday gatherings became my financial responsibility too. Each Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'd fly home with gifts for everyone, take the family grocery shopping, and stock their refrigerator with enough food to last weeks. I'd make restaurant reservations, buy movie tickets, and fill gas tanks. I declined invitations from friends to travel during holidays because I knew my family counted on me. Last year's Christmas exemplified the pattern. I spent over $2,000 on their celebration. A gourmet ham dinner with all the trimmings, personalized gifts for each relative, and I even paid to have professional cleaners prepare the house. Dad drank expensive scotch I'd brought while explaining his latest financial scheme. Mom showed off the presents to neighbors as if she'd selected them herself. Amber complained that her sweater wasn't the premium cashmere version she'd hinted at. By January, I was emotionally exhausted and financially drained. My therapist suggested establishing boundaries. My financial advisor recommended documenting the loans and reducing assistance. My closest friend, Megan, was more blunt. They're using you, Jess. I decided to make changes gradually. In February, I had a video call with my parents and Amber. I love you all, I said carefully, but I need to build my own financial security. I can help with emergencies, but I can't be the family bank anymore. Dad looked shocked. Mom teared up. Amber rolled her eyes. What about your family loyalty? Mom asked. It's not about loyalty, I explained. It's about sustainability. I can help you create budgets if you'd like. The conversation ended awkwardly. Over the following months, I reduced my automatic transfers to their accounts and encouraged them to seek financial counseling. Dad refused outright. Mom agreed but never went. Amber blocked me on Instagram for a week, then unblocked me when she needed money for car insurance. As October turned to November, I broached the subject of Christmas. I'm happy to contribute, but let's plan something modest this year. We understand, Mom said. Times are tough for everyone. I felt cautiously optimistic. Maybe they were finally recognizing reality. I loved my family deeply despite our differences. All I wanted was for them to respect my boundaries and work toward their own stability. I never imagined what they were really planning. The bombshell dropped on December 12th, exactly 13 days before Christmas. Our family group chat, normally filled with memes from Amber and forwarded chain messages from Mom, suddenly became the stage for a dramatic announcement. Dad. With heavy hearts, your mother and I need to tell you that we're canceling Christmas gathering this year. We're just too broke for a big celebration. Better to save our dignity than pretend we can afford what we can't. Mom. We're so sorry, girls. You know we'd never do this unless absolutely necessary. The economy has been brutal on your father's business. Amber. I'm literally crying right now. Christmas is my favorite holiday. This sucks so much. I stared at my phone screen, coffee growing cold beside my laptop. It was a Tuesday morning, and I'd been preparing for a client presentation when the messages appeared. Something felt off, but I couldn't immediately identify what. I can help, I typed back. We don't need anything extravagant. I could bring food and a few gifts. Dad. Absolutely not. We refuse to be charity cases. Not even for our daughter. Mom. We appreciate the thought, sweetheart. But we need to maintain some pride. We'll do a proper celebration when things improve. Amber. Maybe next year. I'll probably just pick up an extra shift at the boutique anyway. A complex mix of emotions swirled through me. Relief that I wouldn't be funding another expensive holiday, guilt about that relief, sadness about the broken tradition, suspicion about the sudden principled stand on financial independence. I called Mom that evening after work. Are you sure I can't help with something small? I asked. Even just a dinner? It doesn't feel right not seeing you all for Christmas. Oh, Jessica, she sighed. Always the responsible one. No, dear. Your father is very firm about this. He says we need to stand on our own feet. That's actually what I've been suggesting for a while, I said carefully. Well, he's finally listening, she replied with another sigh. We'll miss you terribly, but it's for the best. I hung up feeling oddly unsettled. Dad had never refused financial help before. In fact, he'd become expert at asking without directly asking, dropping hints about bills or making offhand comments about tight times until I offered assistance. Despite the cancellation, I still went shopping the following weekend. Nothing extravagant. A leather portfolio for Dad's client meetings, a scarf in Mom's favorite shade of blue, and a gift card for Amber's preferred cosmetics store. I also assembled care packages with homemade cookies, mini bottles of sparkling cider, and personalized ornaments. On December 23rd, I drove to Milwaukee with the gifts and a small cooler of prepared food. I texted when I was an hour away. Surprise! Just a quick drop-off of holiday cheer. Won't stay if you're busy. The responses came rapidly. Dad. Not at home. Working a last-minute open house. Mom. Out getting your father's prescription refilled. Sorry. Amber. Covering someone's shift. Christmas rent won't pay itself. I pulled into a gas station and checked the location-sharing app our family used. All three icons showed they were at home. I considered driving by anyway, but decided against confrontation. Instead, I turned around and drove the 90 minutes back to Chicago, the rejected gifts beside me. Christmas Eve arrived gray and snowy. My decorated apartment felt hollow despite the twinkling lights and small tree in the corner. I'd declined Megan's invitation to join her family, believing my own family's financial hardship story. Now I faced a solitary holiday with no backup plan. I sent a group text. Merry Christmas Eve. Love you all. Available to video chat anytime tomorrow if you'd like. Mom responded with a heart emoji. Dad and Amber didn't respond at all. I tried to maintain my holiday spirit. I made hot chocolate, queued up classic Christmas movies, and wrapped myself in a plush blanket. But the silence from my phone grew increasingly conspicuous as the evening progressed. No additional messages, no calls, Just quiet disconnection on a night meant for togetherness. By 9 o'clock, I gave up on holiday cheer and heated leftover pasta from earlier in the week. As I ate alone at my dining table, I scrolled through social media, looking at friends' family gatherings and festive celebrations. Everyone seemed connected to someone. Everyone except me. The microwave hummed as I reheated my second cup of tea. Outside my condo windows, Chicago's skyline glittered with holiday lights, snow falling gently against the dark December sky. I'd changed into flannel pajamas and thick socks, attempting to create comfort in my solitude. The clock on my oven read 10:17 p.m. Christmas Eve was slipping away, unmarked and uncelebrated. My Christmas tree stood in the corner, a modest 5-foot artificial pine I'd decorated with ornaments collected over the years. Some were from my childhood, carefully transported from my parents' house when I moved out. Others were souvenirs from business trips or gifts from colleagues. The multicolored lights blinked steadily, reflecting off the window and creating the illusion of more company than there was. I'd tried calling each family member individually after my group text went mostly unanswered. Dad's phone went straight to voicemail. Mom's rang 4 times before disconnecting. Amber's played her custom message. If I'm not answering, I'm either working or having more fun than you. The pasta sat heavy in my stomach as I curled deeper into my couch corner. I'd splurged on the sectional last year, envisioning future holiday gatherings in my home, friends and family crowded around with plates of food and glasses of wine. Now it seemed absurdly large for one person. It's white. Christmas or Die Hard, I said aloud to the empty room, browsing through streaming options. My voice sounded strange after hours of silence. The eternal Christmas movie debate. I settled on White Christmas, remembering watching it with Mom when I was young, before family finances became my responsibility. The familiar opening scenes provided mild comfort as I sipped my tea and tried to ignore the growing ache in my chest. Halfway through the movie, my attention drifted to my phone. I opened Instagram without thinking, an automatic gesture born from loneliness. My feed filled with holiday posts, coworkers with their families, college friends returning to hometowns, neighbors attending midnight services. I scrolled without really seeing until a notification appeared. Amber Campbell 92 is live. My sister rarely went live on Instagram. Her content typically consisted of carefully filtered photos of outfits, cocktails, and the occasional inspirational quote she hadn't actually read. A live video seemed out of character, especially on Christmas Eve when she was supposedly working an extra shift. Curiosity piqued, I tapped the notification. The video buffered briefly before revealing my sister's flushed face. She was laughing, clearly tipsy, her makeup flawless, and hair styled in elaborate curls I knew she couldn't create herself. She must have gone to a salon. And this is what happens when you plan the most epic Christmas Eve party ever, she squealed to the camera, panning around to show her surroundings. My breath caught. The background wasn't her apartment or some restaurant. It was my parents' living room, but transformed. Twinkling lights draped every surface. A massive Christmas tree, far larger than their usual modest pine, dominated the corner. Professional-looking garlands framed doorways and windows. The furniture had been rearranged to create a party space, and a table laden with catered food stretched along one wall. But it was the people that made my heart stop. Dozens of guests filled the room, drinks in hand, dressed in festive attire. In the corner, a man with headphones and professional equipment was mixing music. A temporary bar had been set up where someone in a white shirt was pouring champagne into fluted glasses. This wasn't an impromptu gathering. This was a catered, planned, expensive event. The camera swung wildly as Amber danced through the crowd. She stopped to focus on our parents, both dressed in new outfits I'd never seen. Dad wore a crisp button-down shirt that still had the creased look of something recently purchased. Mom's hair was freshly colored, the gray that had been increasingly prominent now completely concealed. They stood in a circle with my aunts, uncles, and several family friends, all laughing and raising glasses. Mom! Dad! Tell everyone Merry Christmas! Amber called. They turned and waved enthusiastically at the camera. Not a hint of financial worry shadowed their faces. No sign of the dignity and poverty they'd claimed when canceling our family celebration. Merry Christmas, everyone! Dad boomed, his voice carrying that distinctive tone he used when he'd been drinking expensive scotch. "Best party of the year." "We're so blessed to have everyone here," Mom added, gesturing around at the gathered friends and relatives. Everyone. The word echoed in my mind. Everyone except me. The camera continued its journey through the party. I recognized neighbors, extended, family and friends of my parents and sister, my mother's entire book club, my father's golf buddies, Amber's friends from high school and her rotating collection of workplaces. Even my cousin Teresa, who had flown in from Arizona based on the caption Amber added as she filmed their hug. "Teresa came all the way from Phoenix for our Christmas extravaganza," she squealed. "Worth every penny of that plane ticket, right? Worth every penny." The phrase burned through me as I mentally calculated the cost of this elaborate celebration. The catering, the alcohol, the DJ, the decorations, the salon appointments. Teresa's plane ticket. The video continued, but now I was watching through a different lens. I noticed the brand new sectional sofa that had replaced their aging furniture, the expensive whiskey Dad was pouring, the designer dress Mom wore, the catered spread that must have cost thousands. Then came the moment that shattered any remaining doubt. "Girl, this party is insane," one of Amber's friends slurred into the camera. "How did you guys afford all this?" Amber giggled and put a finger to her lips in an exaggerated gesture. "Shh, don't tell my sister. She thinks we're broke." She dissolved into laughter, nearly dropping her phone. Dad appeared behind her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "To the best Christmas ever," he proclaimed. "And to Jessica working too hard to notice what her family's up to." They clinked glasses, laughing uproariously at their shared joke. At me. I froze the video and took a screenshot, then another as Amber continued filming. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Slowly, methodically, I captured evidence of their deception while the movie played unwatched in the background. Bing Crosby sang about snow while my family celebrated their successful manipulation. When I couldn't watch anymore, I closed the app and sat in perfect stillness. The tears didn't come immediately. Instead, a cold clarity washed over me, as if I were observing someone else's tragedy from a safe distance. Only the painful constriction in my chest confirmed this betrayal was mine to bear. The clock read 11:43 p.m. when I finally set my phone down. My tea had gone cold, the Christmas movie played to an empty room, and outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing Chicago in silent white. I moved to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Every detail of the Instagram Live replayed in my mind with painful clarity. The professional decorations that transformed my parents' modest home into a holiday showcase. Crystal champagne flutes replacing the mismatched glassware they normally used. A chocolate fountain surrounded by platters of strawberries and marshmallows. An ice sculpture that briefly appeared in the background. An actual ice sculpture that must have cost hundreds of dollars alone. The DJ wasn't some friend with a playlist, but a professional with mixing equipment and lights that pulsed in time. With Christmas remixes. The bar wasn't self-serve but staffed by someone in formal attire expertly mixing cocktails. The food wasn't potluck contributions, but elegant catering displayed on rented silver platters. And the guests, so many guests. Uncle Robert, who supposedly couldn't afford to travel this year. Aunt Patricia and her new husband from Florida. My parents' neighbors and friends, all dressed in their holiday finest. My second cousin's children running around with professionally wrapped gifts. Everyone connected to my family was there, celebrating lavishly while I ate leftovers alone 90 miles away. I returned to my phone and reopened Instagram, this time scrolling through Amber's earlier posts I'd missed while focused on work. 3 days ago, a manicure with holiday designs at an expensive salon. Caption: treating myself for the holidays. Chakra self-care. 2 days ago, shopping bags from high-end stores. Christmas prep in full swing. Yesterday, a selfie in a hair salon chair. Big night ahead, getting glammed. No mention of working extra shifts, no sign of financial struggle. Just the conspicuous consumption she'd always enjoyed, but at a new level of extravagance. I switched to my parents' less active accounts. Mom had posted photos of elaborate gift wrapping with expensive paper and custom ribbons. Dad had checked in at a liquor store known for its premium selection, tagging it Santa's Real Workshop. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app. The site's history of transactions told its own story. Regular transfers to my parents, $2,500 on the first of each month for mortgage assistance. $400 to Amber every 2 weeks for career development expenses, a euphemism we'd created when she claimed to be taking online courses that never materialized. Utility payments, insurance premiums, car repairs, medical bills. The stream of money flowing from my account to theirs seemed endless when compiled. November had seen an unusual increase, an extra $2,000 to my parents for what Dad called property tax shortfall, another $100 or $200 to Amber for winter necessities after she claimed her heating system failed, all while they were apparently planning the celebration I was now watching through social media. The total made me physically ill, $37,850 over the past year alone. Almost $40,000 that could have been in my retirement account, invested, in my future or simply enjoyed by me, the person who had earned it. But the money wasn't what hurt most. It was the laughter, the ease with which they'd excluded me, the casual cruelty of their joke at my expense. Don't tell Jessica. She thinks we're broke. The shared hilarity at how easy I was to deceive. The community they'd built around my absence. I pulled up the text message thread where they'd canceled Christmas, rereading their words with new understanding. We're too broke for a big gathering. Better to save our dignity. I'll probably just pick up an extra shift. Each message now revealed itself as a calculated lie, designed to keep me away while they celebrated with my money. They hadn't wanted a small gathering with me. They'd wanted a blowout party without me. Questions raced through my mind. How long had this been happening? Was this the first time they'd excluded me from an event I'd indirectly funded? How many other family gatherings had been manipulated? This way? I thought back to Thanksgiving, when they'd claimed to be having just a small dinner with the neighbors. Had that been another elaborate celebration? My birthday in September, when everyone was supposedly too busy to visit, had they gathered without me then too? The pattern became clear. For years, I'd been treated as a resource, not a family member. My financial support was welcome, my presence was not. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the boring one who worked too hard and worried too much. The one who wasn't fun at parties but was excellent at paying bills. My phone buzzed with a new notification. Another Instagram alert. Amber Campbell 92 added to their story. I tapped it before I could think better of it. A boomerang video of champagne being poured into multiple glasses, bubbles rising and falling in endless loop. The caption, "Midnight toast coming up. Best Christmas Eve ever." I closed Instagram and sat in the growing stillness of my apartment. The movie had ended. The Christmas tree lights continued their steady blink. Outside, the world had gone quiet under the falling snow. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I took screenshots of bank statements. I saved Amber's videos and posts. I took photos of text messages. Methodically, I created a digital record of the deception, as if preparing evidence for a trial only I would witness. When that was done, I sat cross-legged on my living room floor and wrote out every emotion I was feeling. Betrayal, humiliation, anger, grief, shock. I named each one, acknowledging its presence, refusing to let any aspect of this pain go unrecognized. The last emotion surprised me. Relief. Relief that finally, unavoidably, I could see the truth of my family relationships without the comfortable lies I told myself. Relief that the fog of obligation and guilt had been blown away by the clear, cold wind of their betrayal. As midnight struck and Christmas officially began, I made myself a promise. This would be the last holiday I spent as their bank. The only question was how to end a role I'd been playing for almost a decade. I didn't have to wait long for the perfect opportunity to present itself. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight reflecting off fresh snow with blinding intensity. I hadn't slept. After the discovery, I'd spent hours reviewing years of financial records, text messages, and social media posts, seeing patterns I'd previously ignored. The truth was painful but undeniable. I'd been systematically manipulated and exploited by the people I loved most. Around 4 a.m., physical exhaustion had overtaken emotional turmoil, and I dozed fitfully on the couch, waking frequently to check if more party updates had been posted. They had. Videos of midnight toasts, group photos of family members I hadn't seen in months claiming they couldn't travel this year, a bleary-eyed 2 a.m. clip of my father leading an off-key rendition of Jingle Bells with his arm around my Uncle Robert. By 7 a.m., the evidence of celebration had been replaced with conspicuous silence. Party guests had gone home. My family was, presumably, sleeping off their expensive champagne and elaborate celebration. I made coffee and stood at my window, watching early morning dog walkers navigate snowy sidewalks. Christmas Day stretched before me with no plans, no traditions, no connections. I considered calling Megan to see if her family dinner invitation still stood, but something held me back. I needed this day of solitude to process and plan. The coffee was still too hot to drink when my phone chimed with an incoming text. My father. "Merry Christmas, Jesse. Hope you're doing something nice for yourself today. Quick question. Can you send the $3,800 for January rent? Property management company wants it early because of the holiday." The cup nearly slipped from my hand. Not, "How are you spending Christmas alone?" Not, "We miss you." Not even a pretense of familial concern. Just another financial demand, casually dropped on Christmas morning as if it were the most natural request in the world. $3,800. For rent. On a house they owned with a mortgage I already subsidized monthly. In that moment, something crystallized within me. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. Not just hurt, though the pain was breathtaking. Something deeper and more fundamental. Clarity. The absolute certainty that this pattern would never end unless I ended it. My father had unwittingly provided the perfect opportunity for me to reclaim my life. I set my coffee down and typed a response I'd been rehearsing unconsciously for years. "Lose my number. I don't fund liars." Then I blocked his number. I moved methodically through my contacts. Mom. Blocked. Amber. Blocked. Extended family who had been at the party. All blocked. On every platform, phone, email, social media, payment apps. One by one, I closed the channels they had used to reach me and my resources. Next, I logged into my banking app and canceled all scheduled transfers. I removed my parents and sister as authorized users on my credit card accounts. I changed passwords on every financial platform. I set up fraud alerts on all my accounts. I emailed my financial advisor, despite it being Christmas, to request an emergency meeting to discuss protecting my assets. The process took nearly 2 hours. By the time I finished, my coffee was cold, but I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, my financial resources were truly mine. No one could access them without my explicit permission. I took a shower, letting hot water wash over me as if it could cleanse the betrayal along with Christmas Eve's sleeplessness. I dressed in comfortable clothes, dried my hair, and applied light makeup. Normal routines for an abnormal day. When I checked my phone again, the bombardment had begun. Messages had started arriving through channels I hadn't thought to block. LinkedIn. "Jessica, please call me. It's an emergency." Dad work. Mail. "This is your mother. Call home immediately." Venmo payment request for $3,800 with the note, "Don't be childish. Family helps family." A distant cousin's Facebook message. "Your parents are trying to reach you. They seem upset." A voicemail from an unknown number that turned out to be my uncle. "Jessica, whatever happened, you need to talk to your folks. They're freaking out." 7 different payment requests through various apps, each with increasingly desperate notes. I blocked each new contact methodically, without responding. I forwarded my work email to spam. I reported the payment requests as harassment. I built a digital wall between myself and the financial exploitation that had defined my family relationships. By noon, I'd received over 30 contact attempts. By 3 p.m., the number had climbed to 42. Not one message asked if I was okay. Not one expressed concern for my well-being or acknowledged that I might have had a lonely Christmas. Every communication focused on the sudden financial crisis my family faced without access to my income. At 6:42 p.m., my building's front desk called. "Ms. Campbell, there's an Amber Campbell here to see you. She says she's your sister and it's urgent." I took a deep breath. Tom, I'm not accepting visitors today, especially not Ms. Campbell. Please ask her to leave. She's quite insistent, ma'am. Then please be equally insistent. If necessary, remind her that this is private property and you're authorized to call police for trespassing. Understood, Ms. Campbell. 30 minutes later, he called back. She's gone, ma'am. She left this note. He sent a photo via text. Jess, don't know what your problem is, but you're being incredibly selfish right now. Dad and Mom can't make rent without your help. You know they depend on you. Whatever you think we did, get over yourself and call us. This isn't funny. I saved the photo with the others, evidence of their entitlement and my enabling. Then, I turned off my phone completely, made a simple dinner, and watched a non-holiday movie with my full attention. For the first time in recent memory, I felt in control of my own life. Before going to bed, I turned my phone back on briefly to set an alarm. The notification counter showed 55 missed calls and 17 voicemails. I didn't listen to them except for the most recent one, which had arrived at 7:48 p.m. My mother's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. Jessica, please, call us. 3 words that held no apology, no acknowledgement, no acceptance of responsibility. Just the desperate plea of someone who had lost access to resources they had come to see as an entitlement. I deleted the message, turned off my phone again, and slept more soundly than I had in years. The days following Christmas unfolded like scenes from a movie I was watching rather than living. I returned to work on December 27th, focusing intently on year-end projections and campaign closures. Colleagues commented on my unusual intensity. Taking the holiday spirit a bit too seriously, my supervisor joked during a team meeting. If only he knew how completely the holiday spirit had been extinguished within me. My phone continued to accumulate blocked messages and calls. Family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly found my contact information, each claiming urgent, need to discuss the situation. Distant cousins, great-aunts, former neighbors, anyone who might have influence with me was activated in my family's desperation to restore their financial pipeline. On December 29th, my parents escalated their efforts. I received notification that a wire transfer had been attempted from my primary checking account, an account only they would know about. The transaction was blocked by the new security measures I'd implemented, but the attempt confirmed my worst suspicions about their entitlement to my money. I filed a police report about the attempted unauthorized access. Not because I wanted my parents arrested, but because I needed an official record of their financial misconduct. The officer who took my statement looked uncomfortable when I explained the situation. Family disputes can be complicated, he said, avoiding eye contact as he completed the paperwork. Have you considered mediation? This isn't a dispute, I replied calmly. It's financial exploitation. I'm establishing a paper trail. New Year's Eve arrived with a fresh wave of contact attempts. Friends I hadn't heard from since college messaged to say they were worried about me, based on conversations with Amber. Former colleagues connected to my family expressed concern about my mental health and irrational behavior. The narrative was being carefully constructed. Jessica had a breakdown. Jessica was being unreasonable. Jessica had abandoned her family during a crisis. I maintained my silence. I welcomed 2025 alone in my apartment, watching the fireworks over Lake Michigan with a glass of expensive champagne I'd purchased for myself. For the first time in my adult life, I made New Year's resolutions that focused entirely on my own well-being. January brought practical challenges. My parents' mortgage payment, which I'd been covering for years, came due. Their utilities, registered in my name to help them qualify for assistance programs, went unpaid. Amber's rent, car insurance, and credit card minimum payments all passed their due dates. The messages changed in tone. They're going to shut off the heat. Dad can't get his medication. I'm facing eviction. Each crisis carefully crafted to maximize guilt and obligation. I consulted with a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. Dr. Landon listened carefully to my story, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he looked at me with compassion, rather than judgment. What you're describing is a classic pattern of financial abuse, he said. The difficulty is that when it happens within families, especially from children to parents, it's rarely recognized as abuse. I still feel guilty, I admitted. They're my family. Family can be our greatest support or our deepest wound, he replied. The question now is what boundaries you need to heal that wound. We established a weekly appointment schedule. I committed to the uncomfortable work of examining why I'd allowed the exploitation to continue for so long. The answers weren't simple. A complex mixture of guilt, obligation, genuine love, and deeply ingrained family dynamics that had positioned me as the responsible savior since childhood. Mid-January brought another escalation. Amber appeared at my workplace, creating a scene in the lobby that required security intervention. My supervisor called me into his office afterward, concern evident in his expression. Jessica, is everything okay? Your sister seemed distressed. I took a deep breath and opted for controlled honesty. I'm dealing with a family situation involving financial boundaries. I apologize for any disruption to the workplace. To my surprise, he nodded with understanding. I've been there. Not exactly the same, but close enough. Take the time you need, and let me know if you need support. The workplace incident served as a catalyst for more drastic measures. I consulted with an attorney who specialized in elder law and family finances. Though my parents weren't elderly, the principles of financial boundaries applied. You have no legal obligation to support adult family members, she confirmed after reviewing my situation. However, given their persistent attempts to access your finances, I recommend additional protective measures. I followed her advice, changing my phone number, creating a new email address for professional and personal correspondence, redirecting my mail to a secure P.O. box, and implementing a credit freeze to prevent any new accounts being opened in my name. February arrived with fresh snow and unexpected peace. The constant barrage of contact attempts had slowed to occasional probes through increasingly obscure channels. My therapist noted the change in my demeanor during our sessions. You seem more present, Dr. Landon observed. Less defensive. I feel like I'm breathing fully for the first time in years, I replied. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending managing their needs and expectations. The practical consequences of my boundaries became increasingly evident. Through mutual connections, I learned my parents had been forced to dramatically downsize their lifestyle. Dad had taken on additional real estate work rather than relying on sporadic commissions. Mom had increased her school secretary position to full-time. Amber had moved to a smaller apartment and taken a second job. These changes brought complicated emotions, pride that they were developing self-sufficiency, sadness that it had required such drastic measures, anger that they had resisted these responsible choices for so long, guilt that their standard of living had decreased significantly. They're actually doing what they need to do, I told Dr. Landon during a particularly difficult session. But it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like loss. Because it is loss, he replied gently. You've lost the family narrative you've been living within. They've lost their financial security blanket. Everyone is grieving something, even if the change is ultimately healthy. By March, I had established new routines and relationships. Weekly dinners with Megan and her partner, a book club that met in a cozy cafe near my condo, volunteer work at a financial literacy program that felt both healing and meaningful. My world was smaller in some ways, but authentically mine. The final test came in early April. A letter arrived at my P.O. box, handwritten on familiar stationery. My mother's careful penmanship covered 3 pages with a mixture of apology, explanation, and subtle manipulation. We never meant to take advantage, she wrote. We thought we were just sharing as a family. Your success was everyone's success. Isn't that what family means? The letter ended with renewed requests for financial assistance, framed as, just until we get back on our feet. I read it twice, noting how skillfully it avoided acknowledging the Christmas deception or the years of exploitation. How it characterized my boundaries as abandonment rather than self-preservation. How it still framed my resources as communal property rather than the fruits of my labor. I didn't respond. Instead, I added the letter to my growing file of documentation and scheduled an extra therapy session. This is the hardest part, Dr. Landon said after I read portions of the letter aloud. maintaining boundaries when they're being tested with familiar emotional triggers. I almost sent money, I admitted, just to stop feeling like the villain in their story. And what stopped you? I considered the question carefully. Realizing I don't have to accept the role they've assigned me. I can write my own story now, he smiled. That's not just boundary setting. That's growth. As spring slowly transformed Chicago from gray to green, I felt my own transformation continuing. The daily ache of family estrangement remained, but alongside, it grew something new: self-respect, authentic relationships, and the quiet satisfaction of living according to my own values rather than others' expectations. 6 months after that fateful Christmas Eve, summer sunshine warmed Chicago's streets and parks. I sat on my balcony, iced coffee in hand, overlooking the neighborhood I'd come to love more deeply now that it truly felt like home. The painful winter of estrangement had gradually yielded to a spring of self-discovery, and now a summer of genuine renewal. Therapy with Dr. Landon continued bi-weekly rather than weekly. Our sessions had evolved from crisis management to deeper exploration of family patterns and how they had shaped my understanding of love, duty, and self-worth. When money becomes the primary currency of relationship, he explained during a particularly insightful session, authentic connection becomes nearly impossible. Every interaction gets filtered through calculation rather than affection. This framework helped me understand why my family relationships had felt simultaneously obligatory and empty. The financial expectations had crowded out genuine emotional exchange. Birthday calls centered around hints about needed funds rather than personal celebration. Holiday gatherings became performances of gratitude for my contributions rather than authentic sharing. I keep wondering what my relationship with them would look like without money in the equation, I told Dr. Landon. That's a profoundly important question, he replied, and one that can only be answered if both parties are willing to operate differently. The hardest realization was accepting that my family might never want relationships without financial benefit. Their silence in the month since I'd established boundaries spoke volumes. No one had reached out simply to check on my well-being or express genuine regret. The attempts at contact had dwindled as it became clear that my financial pipeline was permanently closed. My healing journey wasn't just internal. External changes reinforced my commitment to healthier relationships. I'd given my home a modest but meaningful renovation, replacing furniture chosen to accommodate family visits with pieces that reflected my personal style. I'd redirected my family support funds into experiences I'd previously denied myself: cooking classes, weekend trips to Michigan's shoreline, and a photography workshop I'd been interested in for years. Most importantly, I'd built what Dr. Landon called a chosen family, relationships based on mutual respect and genuine connection. Megan remained my closest friend, but my circle had expanded to include colleagues who shared my values, neighbors who checked in during rough days, and my book club members who debated ideas with passion and kindness. Andrea, from the book club, had become a particularly important friend. At 65, she had navigated her own family estrangement decades earlier and offered wisdom without platitudes. The hardest thing to accept, she told me over coffee one Sunday, is that sometimes the healthiest family relationship is no relationship at all, at least for a while. Does the guilt ever completely go away? I asked. She considered this carefully. It transforms, from an acute pain to an occasional twinge, from something that controls your actions to something you acknowledge and then set aside. In late June, exactly 6 months after Christmas, the final attempt at reconnection came. My father arrived unannounced at my office building. The security desk called up, following my established protocol for unwanted visitors. After a moment's consideration, I agreed to meet him in the building's public atrium. This wasn't impulsive. I'd discussed this possibility with Dr. Landon and had clarity about my boundaries. Dad looked older than I remembered. His confident posture diminished. He wore a suit I recognized from years earlier, now slightly worn at the cuffs. When he saw me approach, his expression cycled rapidly through hope, relief, and calculation. "Jessica," he said, stepping forward as if to embrace me. I maintained my distance, and he adjusted, extending his hand instead. I shook it briefly. "You look well," he offered. "Thank you. Why are you here, Dad?" He sighed dramatically. "Can't a father want to see his daughter?" "It's been 6 months, Jessie. Your mother is beside herself with worry." I nodded, recognizing the familiar pattern of emotional manipulation. "I'm fine, as you can see. Was there something specific you wanted to discuss?" His facade cracked slightly. "Look, we made a mistake at Christmas. We should have included you in the party. Is that really worth destroying your family over?" The characterization was so stunningly incomplete that I almost laughed. "That's your understanding of what happened? That I'm upset about missing a party?" "We've apologized. What more do you want?" "You've never apologized," I corrected calmly. "Not once. You've demanded, guilted, and attempted to access my accounts without permission, but you've never acknowledged the years of financial exploitation or the deliberate deception." He flushed. "That's a harsh characterization of family helping family. It wasn't mutual help, Dad. It was one-way extraction." The conversation continued in this vein for several minutes. He minimized. I held firm. He implied I was selfish. I remained calm. He mentioned my mother's increasing anxiety. I expressed genuine hope that she would seek appropriate professional support. Finally, when his indirect approaches failed, he revealed his actual purpose. "The bank is threatening foreclosure, Jessica. We need $27,000 to get current on the mortgage." The amount was specific, the crisis real. For a fleeting moment, old patterns of responsibility tugged at me. I could solve this problem. I had the resources. Wasn't family worth helping? In genuine crisis? Then I recognized what Dr. Landon had helped me see. The crisis was the culmination of choices made repeatedly despite having alternatives. My assistance wouldn't solve the underlying patterns, only postpone their inevitable consequences. "I'm sorry you're facing foreclosure," I said sincerely. "I can recommend an excellent financial counselor who helps people negotiate with banks." His expression hardened. "So that's it? After everything we've done for you?" "This is me establishing healthy boundaries, Dad. I won't be your bank anymore, but I'm open to building a relationship based on mutual respect if you're ever interested in that." I offered a business card with my therapist's information written on the back. "Dr. Landon specializes in family reconciliation. If you and Mom are genuinely interested in rebuilding our relationship without financial entanglement, this would be a place to start." He looked at the card as if it were a foreign object, then reluctantly pocketed it. "Your mother will be devastated." "I love you both," I said, meaning it despite everything. "But I won't sacrifice my financial security or self-respect for a one-sided relationship anymore." After he left, I sat alone in the atrium for several minutes, allowing the emotions to wash through me. Sadness, relief, resolve, and a quiet pride in maintaining my boundaries with compassion rather than anger. That evening, I created new traditions with my chosen family. Megan and her partner David hosted a summer barbecue on their rooftop deck. Andrea brought her famous peach cobbler. My colleague Josh played guitar while his husband Michael told increasingly outrageous stories that had us all laughing until our sides hurt. Under the stars, surrounded by people who wanted nothing from me except my authentic presence, I recognized the profound truth I'd been learning these past 6 months. Real love empowers rather than depletes. Real family, whether biological or chosen, enhances your life rather than extracting from it. The following Christmas was approaching, my first full holiday season with my new boundaries firmly established. I'd already made plans. Volunteering at a community dinner in the morning, hosting a small gathering of friends in the afternoon, and attending a concert in the evening. The day would be filled with genuine connection rather than financial obligation disguised as family duty. I still thought about my parents and sister. I hoped that someday they might recognize the destructive patterns that had shaped our relationships. I kept the door open for reconciliation based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. But I no longer put my life on hold waiting for that transformation. The most important gift I'd given myself was the recognition that I deserved relationships based on love rather than utility. That setting boundaries wasn't selfish but essential. That sometimes the most compassionate action, for others and yourself, is to stop enabling destructive patterns. On my balcony, watching the summer sunset paint Chicago's skyline in gold and pink, I realized how far I'd come from that lonely Christmas Eve. The journey had been painful but necessary. The destination wasn't estrangement, but authenticity. Not isolation, but selective connection. Not bitterness, but wisdom. I'd learned that sometimes you have to lose what you thought was family to discover what family truly means. That real love never comes with a price tag. That the most valuable gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enrich your life. And perhaps most importantly, I'd learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. It means integrating the experience into your life story as a chapter of growth rather than a permanent limitation. It means recognizing that your worth isn't determined by what you provide to others, but by the integrity with which you live your own life. As the last light faded from the sky, I made a silent promise to myself to keep building connections based on mutual respect, to maintain boundaries with compassion rather than resentment, and to remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, shared but in authentic moments exchanged. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? I'd be genuinely interested to hear your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most important growth. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Remember, your worth isn't determined by what you give to others, but by how authentically you live your own life. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and I wish you the courage to create relationships that nurture rather than deplete you.